All right, our next speaker is Mr. James Shields. He is the manager of the African American Cultural Arts and History Center here in Burlington. Prior to this latest appointment, he served for over 20 years as the director of the Bonner Center for Community Service and Learning at the Guilford College. James's community involvement includes being the chairman of the board for the Snow Camp Historical Society, ILMU Empowerment Services, and the nonprofit Motherland International. He currently serves as the vice president of the Piedmont Blues Preservation Society. For over 20 years, he has given numerous dramatic presentations and lectures on the Underground Railroad to schools and civic groups. James served as one of the lead guides for the Underground Railroad tours conducted on the Guilford College campus. He is also known for his work as an actor and director in the drama produced by Snow Camp Outdoor Theaters, Pathway to Freedom, which depicts the history of the Underground Railroad in Guilford and Alamance counties. James has been a performing artist for over 40 years in his various theatrical productions, and currently is a member of the reggae band Dubfire. All right, let us give a warm welcome to Mr. Shields. And also a warm thank you to Mr. Donovan.
Good morning, everyone. All right, hope you can hear me. I usually don't get accused of having a soft voice. I'm really happy to be here to talk to you. I know the theme or whatever was underserved communities, and we'll certainly touch on that. And hopefully I want to kind of go through what I want to talk about, and hopefully we'll have some time to have a conversation and questions and input from folks about why are communities underserved when we talk about historic preservation and recognition, right? I've been in my position now for about a year and a half. I feel really blessed to be in this community, especially in my role in just trying to bring more awareness to the history of African Americans in this county. It's very rich. It goes back to the very beginnings of the county, and I think it's really important. My connection to Alamance County goes back at least 20 years working with Snow Camp, and I'll do a shameless plug later about what's happening down in Snow Camp. Some of you probably know that we haven't done a whole lot there for several years, and we're back. We just did a sort of piece this past weekend to 3 sold out crowds. So we're really happy about that. Yeah. So we really appreciate the fact that, you know, all of the people who were saying, when are you guys coming back? When are you guys coming back? They actually came, right? You know, to see the show. And so we'll talk more about that toward the end. So what I want to do in this short period of time, because I know I'm standing between you and lunch, so I want to keep that in mind. But what I want to do, talk a little bit about our spot and some of the things that we're doing, touch on some subjects, and I hope that you walk away with questions, to be honest with you, about how do we move forward, how do we become more inclusive when we talk about the history of this county. You know, we don't always think about certain parts of a community when we think about the history, right? When I first started this job, I really went down the rabbit hole in terms of the history. And to be quite frank, when you look at a lot of the books that have been written about the history of Burlington, the history of Alamance, and I'm looking and I'm like, where are my people, right? Where are they? So someone intentionally decided we're not going to include the history of these folks in our history, right? So part of our job is to rectify that, right? I want to start with a quote from Dr. Eddie Glaude Jr. He's one of my heroes, really, in terms as a historian. If you don't know who he is, he's got some great books out there. He's on MSNBC on a regular basis. But the quote he has here is, how, what, and who we celebrate reflects what and who we value. And how we celebrate our past reflects ultimately who we take ourselves to be today. So I want y'all to reflect on that and think about some of the issues that this county has had when it comes to how we celebrate the past, right? There's some things I don't necessarily have to mention, right, that we know about. And so, and I want to come back to that toward the end and see what you think about that. So, again, I work for the African American Cultural Arts and History Center. We're dedicated to preserving and celebrating the history of African Americans here in this county. It's very rich. It goes back to the very beginnings, even when this county was Orange County, right? So we've been here. We've been here for a long time. And it's been a great job because we have so many people that come through and said, I had no idea. I didn't know this, that, and the other. Certain events that we talk about, whether it's black people, white people, whoever, they said, wow, I had no idea. And so it makes my job kind of easy because it's really cool to share new things with people. At the same time, it can be frustrating when you have people that have lived here all their lives and they never knew about certain events that happen. And why don't they know? We have students, young people that come in and they're like, wow, they don't teach us this in school, right? And so those are some of the things that we are trying to rectify. This is Miss Jane Sellers. She's the founder. She started this work way back. She was always interested in the history. She really started this she wanted to bring some awareness to the Richmond Hill community here in Burlington. She was hoping to get a historic designation for that spot. She passed away in 2019. She, as you see, here's one of her quotes: "This history has to be preserved, and if we don't preserve it, it'll be gone." And so a lot of what we do is playing catch up. A lot of the things that we talk about, which we'll show you in a few minutes, is just trying to catch up in terms of things that wasn't put in the books, things that we don't hear about, things that we don't talk about. When you're talking about African Americans, regardless whether it's here, whether it's Greensboro, whether it's Durham or wherever, a lot of times the history of African Americans in a community, it does involve a certain amount of trauma. And so when we talk about history, we say, well, we don't want to add that. It makes people feel bad, but it happened, okay? I truly believe that as a county, as a city, as a country, I think until we reconcile ourselves with this history, it's going to be hard for us to come together. The good, the bad, the everything, that's what makes us this great country. And so this idea that we don't want to talk about certain things because it makes people feel bad doesn't make sense to me as a historian, because you have to talk about all of it, okay? And so I am very pleased and honored to be able to further the mission and the passion that Jane Sellers had for exposing the history. Here's a picture of her, for example. decide and exhibit. So she used to do these pop-up exhibits. So she did not live to see our physical space. And so she would do these pop-up exhibits. And what you see here is an exhibit of Bobby Bennett. Who was Bobby Bennett? Bobby Bennett went to Jordan Cellars here in Burlington. Bobby Bennett was a member of the Famous Flames. Who were the Famous Flames? Right? The Famous Flames sung with James Brown. Before it was James Brown, it was James Brown joined the Famous Flames. Okay? And so this man came out of this city. So again, this is something that we should celebrate, but a lot of people have no idea. This man is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that's a picture of him speaking at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was the only person that was left. Okay. This is Jane and her daughter, our executive director, Shanice, and they are in front of the McRae School, which is a Rosenwald school. This school has since been refurbished a lot due to some of the efforts of Jane and other folks in the community. We just recently got, I hate to use the word control, but we recently got the keys to the school, and we're looking forward to doing some programming. I'm hoping right now, for example, next summer, we want to do a youth program, kind of like History Detectives or something, right? And the school has an outdoor classroom. It has some other things, and so we are hoping to kind of build on this access to this school. So I want to talk about some of the things that we're doing. And one of the things that we're doing, or one of the things that we continue to do, is looking at Worth Street, right? I'm pointing in the right direction. So we started doing this work with a young lady. Her name is Lucy Garcia. She was a senior at Elon, and she was doing a senior project. We knew about Worth Street. We knew that there were black businesses here on Worth Street, and it used to be called the Black Bottom. Okay? A lot of people don't know that. And so you've got certain places like here and here, you probably can't read that, but it says Negro tenement. This is a Sanborn fire map. Here it says Darky Schoolhouse is what it's called. So this is like an official map, but instead of saying, Negro or whatever, they say Darky Schoolhouse. We believe that this particular one may be the school that was run by David Worth that was burned down. Okay? Again, this is part of our history, right? So why would you burn down? I'm sorry.
What year is this Sanborn map from?
This one is from 1893. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we've got another one here as well. Again, this is 1929. Still, there were a few black businesses that were on this street. And part of the point that we want to make is part of the study that we did was to identify the businesses. We identified over the course of from about 1887 going into the 70s, close to 50 businesses, black businesses that were on Worth Street, or known as the Black Bottom. Now, it was called the Black Bottom primarily because this part of downtown kind of sloped down and kind of in a floodplain, and so they called it the Black Bottom. The Black Bottom is a term that's used in a lot of places, not just here in Burlington. You can go in a lot of places in the South. This idea that, it belongs to black people, so we're going to call it a certain thing, right? So that's another map of the Black Bottom. Here, you can see, this is the core area right here. this is 1951. And Moorhead Street, which is here, was extended in the early 60s. And so these buildings were destroyed and torn down. Then, if you look at farther, if you look at here, Maple Street was extended. And so now even more of the buildings, were torn down. So by 1984, there were no black businesses here in downtown, and especially here on Worth Street. Part of our study is looking at, why. We kind of know why, but we want to find an official reason. We know the same old story that we know in Durham and Greensboro and other places, urban development. And so, but it seems like the communities that suffered when we do this has always been the communities of color, especially African American communities. For example, in Durham, you have the Hayti community. Let's build a highway right through this historic district. And so we talk about, what do we value as history? Who gets to make that decision of what's valuable when it comes to history and what's not? Greensboro, same thing. East Greensboro was a bustling business section. Let's build a road through East Greensboro and destroy all these businesses. Same thing here. Why? We don't know. But we know that, we heard the word displacement. And again, it always seems to be connected to those African American communities. And we hear about it all over North Carolina and all over the South. So this is a study that is ongoing. It's a rabbit hole that's deep in terms of trying to figure out who made the decision to move these businesses out, who made the decision and why. Why we know that when we look at some of the documents that black business people and leaders were not included in making those decisions. Okay? So we know that, let me go back for a minute before I go there. So we know that at least a few of these businesses that were on Worth Street were displaced and they were moved over to Rawhut Street. Okay? Now, early on, early 1900s, even going into the 50s or whatever, Rawhut Street, or parts of it, and actually back then it was called Glencoe Road. It wasn't paved. A lot of the places didn't have sewer and water, but yet this is where you get to go to have your business. Next week, next Saturday, we're actually conducting a walking tour, and we're working with Preservation Burlington and Alamance, and so we're hoping that folks will sign up for that and learn a little bit about maybe a side of town that you've never been on, or maybe a side of town that people kind of drive through really fast because of what the perception has been. For example, Black Bottom, when we did our research going through the newspaper, that's one thing I've done since I've had this, I've probably gone through like 100 years of Daily Times news. And when you search Black Bottom, it's always like crime, somebody got robbed, there was a liquor house that was raided, it was always that. But we know that there was more going on. One thing that's really important, especially when you think about African American, communities, is that a lot of our history is passed on orally. Part of it is a necessity because, again, you open this book, History of Alamance, we're not in there. So how do we share these stories? You open up a book about the history of Burlington. Where are we? And so you have to share these stories orally through the churches, just through families, and things like that. And so it's been so important for us to do that. And even now, the one beautiful thing I love about my job is when people come to the center and they tell their stories. Stories that are not written down in a book, stories that a lot of people just don't know, whether it's the Black Bottom. We have pictures of some of the businesses that were either here in the Black Bottom or over like on Rawhut Street, and we get people come in, oh, that's Miss So-and-so, she used to do our hair. Oh, that's Mr. So-and-so, and he used to do this for us. And so now people are like, you get these memories that are shared, but just with a certain group. But these are memories that we want to share with everyone. We want this collective memory and not just one that's segregated, right? A lot of what we find is segregated memories of Burlington. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, for example, down on Rawhut Street, this is the office of Dr. William Shanks. I can't tell you how many black folks have come to our center and saying, he delivered me. He delivered me, right? But think about it. In a town like Burlington or whatever, how many black doctors do you think there were? Right? Not many. Think about the fact that if you were black living in Burlington, you were sent to the basement of the hospital. Again, it's traumatic, doesn't make you feel good, but it happened. It happened. And so we have to reconcile ourselves with that. Dr. Shanks, so for most people, when you got medical attention, this is where you came. Dr. Shanks didn't always have access to the hospital, and if he did, it was in the basement. Okay. Dr. Shanks was also, as you see here, was the first black man to be on the school board, and he was on the school board during that crucial time of integration. Very important time, very traumatic time for a lot of people. Okay. This is Dr. Stephen Thomas's office on Rawhut Street. He was a dentist. Okay, again, where do you go to take care of your teeth? He was probably the only game in town for a long time. For a long time. First Baptist Church. Now, I'm not from here, and so I just say First Baptist Church. Based on my research, First Baptist Church was the First Baptist Church, right? Now, most people from here say First Baptist Church on Apple, but even that speaks to the idea of segregation. Even that speaks to how can you be First Baptist Church if you weren't first? When in truth, that's first. But yet, if we designate this particular church, we have to say First Baptist Church on Apple. I feel like if there's already a First Baptist Church, well then you get to be Second Baptist or Third Baptist, right? So, First Baptist Church, of course, was founded and created by Spencer Thomas. Spencer Thomas was one of the leaders that came up after the Civil War, during the days of Reconstruction. Spencer Thomas, along with his son Sam Thomas, and other people, Wyatt Outlaw and other folks like that, these were people that stepped up. In almost every community in the South, you had these black men and women who stepped up to lead. Here in Alamance County, one of the first things they did was establish schools and churches.
What year was that?
I want to say 72, 73. Don't quote me on that. But I'm really quick to tell you if I don't know, or but that was the first church. Now this church, there was a First Baptist church on Church Street. Now, I've been told that Church Street was named Church Street because of the black church that was on that street. That's what I've been told. So several of these spots, like the churches, businesses, again, they were displaced and they were moved to other places. This is another building that's off of Rawhut Street, and it used to be an office for North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company. Who knows about them? Okay. Now I was telling the lady, I grew up in Durham, and it was founded in Durham, founded by Mr. Merrick and Mr. Moore, and later C.C. Spalding, and it was a very important company in the black communities in the South, especially in North Carolina. It was that one place where you knew if you had this insurance, at least we know that we can properly bury grandma. Because for a lot of people, that's what it was about. Having that money so that grandma can have her plot, grandma can have her spot, right? You'll never forget, if you grew up in that community, you understood, you get to knock on the door, who is it? Oh, it's the mutual man. He's coming to get that 50 cents. He's coming to get that dollar, right? There were very few white insurance companies that would even deal with you, that would even come. So even as far back as, going back into the 20s, 30s, 40s, this idea of redlining, where, you guys live in this zip code, we're not even gonna deal with you. Not worth our time, okay? This is the Palace Barbershop, and again, if you go on our tour, you will get to go and see this. Now, a lot of times, when you think about historic preservation, you don't always think about a place that looks like that. You think about some of the things you see on the walls here, right? But think about the community and what a place like this means to that community. Not you living on the west side, but the folks that live here. This is the Palace Barbershop. If you know anything about a barbershop in the black community, it was the hub. If you want to get the tea, that's where you go, right? But this is one of the few businesses that transitioned from Worth Street over to Rawhut Street. There's only really two places. You've got the Palace, so you got the Palace spot, and then there was a pharmacy. It was called the Worth Street Pharmacy, but then it became the Rawhut Street Pharmacy. Jordan Sellers High School. Jordan Sellers, of course, was the black high school. Of course, just like most southern cities, schools were segregated. We have a lot of yearbooks from, well, not a lot, we would like to have more, but we have several yearbooks from Jordan Sellers, from Graham Central High School. There's one more school, I think we have a few, but we're trying to get more because we want to scan them, right? I can't tell you how many people have come in and have spent literally hours going through those yearbooks, right? A lot of the stuff that we know, a lot of the trophies, a lot of the things that were connected to this high school were just thrown in a dumpster and they're gone. We know that Jordan Sellers, for example, was well known in terms of athletics. Where are all those trophies? State championships, things like that. I went to Hillside High School, and they used to talk about Jordan Sellers. Yeah, Jordan Sellers used to come, they used to whip us, right? Or we used to go to Burlington, we would whip them, right? Because back then, if you lived in Durham, for example, you didn't play Durham High School. If you're here, you don't play. You don't play Williams, right? And so you have to go to Durham. You have to go to Fayetteville. You play E.E. Smith. You go up to Danville, and you play the black schools there. That's what we had to do. One of the things that we talk about when you do a tour of our place, and this is based on the feedback that we've got from people, there are a lot of folks who believe from an education standpoint that things were better during segregation. And I've seen people when we say that and they get this look of, what do you mean? You know, integration was a good thing. And then I ask the question, did we integrate or did we just simply desegregate? Okay? And then what's the answer to that question? Well, the answer to that question goes back to May of 1969, when we had the protests from the students. Those first few students that were siphoned off of Jordan Sellers, who now are going to Williams High School, which of course we know was the white high school. Over 1,400 students and only 60 were black. While technically they were told, oh, join a club, you can be a part of this, you can be a part of that. The reality is many of these kids were threatened. Some of the white students were bringing weapons. When I say weapons, I'm not talking about sticks and knives. I'm talking, they were bringing guns and rifles. And they were being allowed to do that. So they had a protest. They went through the proper channels saying, look, we have these grievances. They even walked down to the superintendent's office. He didn't want to talk to him. And so they kind of trashed his office. And that was the beginning of the protests. They went back to the school. They went back to Williams High School. And the remaining class that was still at Jordan Sellers, they walk over to Williams and they have a protest. The protesters are pushed away from the middle of Burlington because we can't have that. And the protest went down to Rawhut Street. And the protest turned into a riot. Now there's questions as to how it turned into a riot. I would suggest to you that when you send every policeman that works for Burlington, State Patrol, Sheriff's Office, and National Guard, you're probably gonna get a riot, right? There was a young man, Leon Mebane, who was shot and killed during that time. And I didn't really mean to go that deep into what happened here, but again, it's something that a lot of people don't know about. We had a young lady, she was a white person, she was a student at Williams during that time, and she said, I really don't remember, because when she saw the picture of Leon Mebane in his casket, she said, I had no idea somebody was shot and killed. Because her mother pulled her out of school that week. A lot of white kids were pulled out of school when all that stuff was going on. Again, this is a whole nother presentation, so I won't go deep into that, but I just wanted to point that out because it's a part of history that many people either don't know, don't want to know, or was never told, including young people that go to Williams High School today. We had a group of kids from Williams. We had two groups that came. We had 40 in one group and 60 in the other group. Overwhelming as someone who had to kind of lead them through this stuff. But it was beautiful because we had been trying to get kids to come in for a long time. And they spent a lot of time looking at the exhibit about their high school because nobody's talking about it, right? Because we don't want them to feel bad, do we? Right? We want them to love their school. But Jordan Sellers is one of the places that you will see if you go on our tour. I wish we could, I know it's just kind of used as a resource center for the schools, and I hope that maybe one day we can figure out a better use for this building. This is the McCray School that we talked about. It looks a lot better now than what you see here. There's an addition that's been put on it. To the right, you can't see it, but to the right there, we have an outdoor classroom, and there's an outhouse out there. And so if you've never used an outhouse and you want to have that experience, I can tell you it's one that you can pass by. But it is something. It is something to see. The Cray School again was a Rosenwald school. So Julius Rosenwald, working with Booker T. Washington, they went all through the South building these schools. Tens of millions of dollars that they spent to build these small schools. And so we know at least 9 were built just here in Alamance County. Because again, education was crucial. Education was crucial. Ma'am?
Is that the only one that's left?
This is the only one that we know of. I think, a lot of these Rosenwald schools that we're finding are stuck in the middle of woods somewhere, waiting to be refurbished, waiting to be recognized. I don't know exactly where some of the other ones are. Here, over in Snow Camp, we have a building that we just call the Colored Schoolhouse that was moved over to Snow Camp. Now, where it came from, whether or not it was a Rosenwald school, we don't know. But just like this school, it does have some of the original desks. It has maps, and you can tell that it goes back because you look at the map, there's no Alaska, there's no Hawaii, right? So it tells you just how old it is.
We know that we always talk about the Rosenwald schools and that the Rosenwalds gave money. But in order for the schools to be built, there had to be a matching amount of
That's
money
right.
coming from the community. Do we have any idea how much the community had come up with in order to build the McCray School to be built? Do we have any idea?
I don't. I have read where there was a quote from a man who was illiterate. He didn't read himself, but he worked tirelessly with his church. He worked with other people to help raise money to build that school. And so, not only did you get money from the community, but the sweat equity that went into it as well. So people came in and they helped to build these schools because, again, they understood education was crucial. Yes?
Yes, I work with Historic Preservation Office, and we're under the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and we're working on a Rosenwald convening later, hopefully in November of this year. So stay posted. We also have some information about Rosenwald schools on our website. So.
And I know PBS just recently, there's a documentary that you can access that talks about some of the Rosenwald schools here in North Carolina. So we're really looking forward to utilizing this space in order to tell our story. So one of the things that we do, I talked earlier about the importance of oral histories. One of the things that we do, we work with Elon, and we've been doing this now. Actually, Jane started this with a professor at Elon, and it turned into the Power in Place Collaborative. And what we've done since 2017 is that we've collected over 60 oral histories, mainly in the African American community, but we have branched out where we've reached out to folks in the Latinx community, folks in the Muslim community, for example, because again, we want folks to tell their stories. And the whole idea of like power in place. And we've talked a lot about place, and I'm hoping at some point we spend more time on the power piece because it's important, or lack thereof. What happens to a community if you don't have power? Well, you get pushed off of Worth Street. What happens to a community if you don't have access to the seats of power, city council, commissioners? Well, it takes forever to get just basic needs like water and sewer and paved roads and things like that, okay? So we've been doing these. This actually goes back, my very first day was doing this. This is, of course, Dr. Rosalind Crisp, and she's a dentist, and she tells her story about living in Burlington. She talks about, for example, okay, we just had our carousel festival, right? One of the things that we don't talk about, because we want to celebrate the carousel, but y'all got to understand that there's a sizable amount of people, fellow citizens, that feel some kind of way about that carousel. Some of it's myth, right? We talked about that. But some of it is real because they couldn't use that carousel. Dr. Chris talks about how she would drive with her father and they would drive past the carousel. Oh, Dad, can we go to the carousel like any other kid? No, not today, baby. Maybe some other time. Now, in her mind, she's probably thinking, like I probably would, Dad, you suck. You won't take me. You don't want to tell your little kid you can't go to the carousel because of the color of your skin. Okay. And so she talks about that, and she talks about that with a sense of pain, right? She also talks about how her father would drive her all the way to Greensboro to get ice cream. And I've heard that a lot, where people would drive to other places to get ice cream and things like that because they weren't going to go to a back door to get ice cream. Or, for example, we got Zach's down the road. And I talk to kids, right? So how many of you guys have been to Zach's? Oh yeah, we've been to Zach's, right? Did you know that there was a time where if you were black, if you wanted to go to Zach's, you had to go to the back? I had a young lady, and I call her a young lady, but she's probably in her 60s or whatever. And she said, that her dad told her, I better not ever see you go to the back of that place to get a hot dog. Again, this is a story of Burlington that we don't talk about, that we have to document. But I really appreciated her story. She also talked about going to Carolina, being the first black woman to graduate from the dentist school, and she decided to come back here. In spite of everything we just talked about, she came back here. And she talked about having to go to 10 different banks before she found a bank that would loan her money so that she could start her practice. Right? Now she's well known. So this Power in Place Collaborative, and if you Google it, you can have access. If you go to YouTube, we have a YouTube page. Most of the interviews are there. And you can get an idea of a different side of Burlington, a different narrative of our city. This is just a photo from a previous tour that we've done. Again, we try to do this tour on a regular basis. This is mainly for Elon students, which I really appreciated. One of the things that Elon is trying to do is expose these kids to more of the history of Burlington and just Burlington in general. You're here for 4 years, right? And you should know this. That's what I used to do with my kids, in Greensboro. I would take my first years before they ever took a class, and we would do what I call a social justice tour of Greensboro. And not necessarily the civil rights, museum, which is okay, but we would take them to the spot, for example, in Morningside Homes, where they had the Klan and Nazi massacre. It's important for them to know this kind of stuff, right? So this is a tour. We usually try to bring in people from the community to help us do the tour. This is Shanice, again, giving a tour to some young people. I just can't emphasize enough how we have to tell this story and how there are stories that have not been told, that have not been documented intentionally. And we get so many people, especially the young people. I just want you guys to know that as we talk about this stuff about, you know, not including certain parts of history and things like that, it's not because of the young people. Trust me, they want to know this stuff. We have, for example, we have the thing about Africa, and this young white girl from Williams High School, and she's standing there and she's looking at it, and I'm like, okay, here we go. You know, she's gonna have something to say. And I said, what's wrong? Can I help you? She says, I'm just mad. And I was like, okay, why are you mad? Because we don't talk about this in our school. Why is that? That's a whole nother conversation. So I want to go back to Dr. Glad and what he said about how, what, who we celebrate, how that reflects on our community. If we really want to come together as a community, right? I didn't mention it at first, but I'm just going to put it out there because it's an elephant. This statue that we've talked about, that's over in Grant, right? What message are you sending to folks of color, especially African Americans whose families have been here as long as the other folks? What message do you send when not only do you insist on having this statue, but you're going to even build something around it because it's not going anywhere? Let's have a conversation. I would love to have a conversation, a real conversation without all the emotion. I think it's okay to have emotion and passion, but come with facts. And if you say, this is our heritage, own all of it. Own all of it. And that's what I mean about in terms of when we think about underserved communities when it comes to history, this is the part that we're talking about. A lot of people, for example, don't know Alamance County was the center of anti-Confederate work. They had what they called the Red Strings, better known as the Heroes of America. These were men that didn't believe that we should succeed from the Union. They would help young men, put them along the same route of the Underground Railroad so that they would not be conscripted. Again, I'm not making this up. Do the research. I had a guy come to the center. I don't know how he heard about me, but somebody told him, you need to go talk to this guy. And he was from the Sons of the Confederacy. And he came with all this stuff. Most of it was myth, right? And he took what I had to say, you know, a certain way, because I'm saying, look, here's the book. I got stacks of books. Here's the book. Here's this, here's that, here's, you know, and he's like, wow. He had no idea, right? That the fact that some of the people that we're trying to honor probably didn't want to go. But again, that's a conversation that we could have. I think that's a conversation that will bring us together. Okay, so there's just so much to say, and I know that our time is done, but there's just so much to say about inclusion when it comes to the history. And when you don't include certain aspects or certain people, it does a disservice to everybody. Not just those Black Americans that live in this county who just want to be recognized for their contributions. Right? We just recently took down an exhibit honoring those African Americans from Alamance County who served in the armed forces. Whole wall of little photos of men and women who have served in every branch, except for the Space Force. And it was so cool that we kept it up for so long because people kept coming. Hey, I saw your uncle up on that wall. I saw your mom, or I saw your dad, or whatever. Or I don't see my grandfather. Well, give us a picture. Next year, we will put him up. But the beautiful thing is an example of what we feel like we have become a place that belongs to the community. that they can walk into a place like that and see themselves in a different light. Because if we depended on the history books that have been written, if we depended on Daily Times News, you're going to get a different narrative, you're going to get a different perspective. And so that's it. Come see us. We're at 2381 Corporation Parkway, what used to be the BMOC. We're there Tuesday through Saturday. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm there until 7 o'clock. So if you get off of work and you just want to come by, I love when people want to just come by and talk, right? I had a conversation with Woody not too long ago. We talked, right? And we have so many people want to talk about this stuff. They really do. And so again, I hope that we can play a role in bringing people together who are serious about history, and that we can go do this back and forth. Again, I had a guy, for example, who believed that somebody in his family was part of the mob that lynched Wyatt Outlaw. And he admitted that. And when you think about it, was 60 and more than 60 men that were out there. Certainly some of those, the descendants of some of those folks are still here. And it's not about shame or blame. We just want to know. We want to talk about the history, right? Again, the Wyatt Outlaw thing. Again, that's a whole nother ball of wax that we need to talk about, okay?